Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Wow, what a great looking group. I can't believe this many people's out on a Saturday morning. This is truly an elite group of people willing to come and spend your time, your free time, and your money to try to invest in your education. Before we get started, let me ask you if you would please put your phone on vibrate or silent or something. We are going to be recording this video and tape recording. And if you're one of my students, it'll be on the training side. If you're not, you should be probably. First of all, when we finish here, if you're not one of my students and you would like to find out about the mentoring program, simple, where you signed in, if you just put a star by your name, I'll send you an email, follow it up with a phone call. And so you can have a free consultation and find out about how the mentoring program works. If you're a part of my mentoring program already, raise your hand. Now keep your hand up. Now if you're not and you're interested, pick one of those people there and ask them how it works. You say, does it work? Is it a good thing to do? If you have questions, please hold the questions to the end. We will have a spot for questions. You'll probably have several. Just make notes on your handout there. And before we get started, I want to say this. I am not a real estate attorney. I'm not a realtor. I'm not a CPA. I'm just a real estate investor. And before you go and do anything in real estate, I suggest that you contact one of those professionals and get their advice. The things I'm going to be telling you today are just from my experience, and I hope that they help. Let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about buying property and using other people's money to buy property, some of those different techniques. Now, all of my training comes off of 7 different secrets of becoming a successful real estate investor. Yeah, look it up. The first of the 7 secrets is getting your mind right. The second one is seeking wisdom. And the third one is developing skills. That's the one that we're going to be talking about today, developing skills. And you can see the others are making detailed plans, taking massive action, forming great alliances, and being persistent. The skills in real estate investing, there are 5 of them. If you do not master these 5 skills, I promise you, you will not be a successful real estate investor. Those 5 skills are mining, finding good deals, money, finding money, maintenance, getting the property fixed up and ready to go, marketing, filling the property, not leaving that property sitting there empty costing you a lot of money, and then management. So if you do put someone else there, someone to rent the property, you need to be able to manage them. So let's talk about money. Today, there are a lot of different ways to finance buying real estate, investment real estate. The most common way is to go to a mortgage company and borrow the money. Other ways would be credit cards, investors, partners, sellers, banks, hard money, home equity lines of credit, and subject to notes and wraps. Today we're going to be talking about subject to and notes, buying property with subject to and notes, and we'll mention wraps because somebody's going to bring it up if I don't mention it anyway. Now, subject to, according to Carlton Sheets, who I respect, I think he's got some good training, Carlton says that subject to means to purchase a property subject to a mortgage on the property. The purchaser assumes no liability for the repayment of the mortgage debt. The only money that's at risk is the equity that you gain when you buy the property. The subject to technique is not new. It's been around for many, many, many years. People were teaching it when I started back in the early 70s. I bought my first property in 71, and I really got into this in 75, and subject to was a big thing then. It's not assuming a loan. Assuming a loan means you put your name on the loan, the bank goes to you for the money. In subject to, the loan stays in place. The seller really still owes the money. You've just agreed to pay the monthly payments on it. If there's a foreclosure on the property that you purchased subject to, it will not affect your credit because your name is not on the note to the bank. It will affect the seller's credit. So the buyer is not obligated to pay the bank loan, only a moral obligation, and if you don't pay it, you're going to lose your property. You're going to lose your equity that you put together. There's some great benefits to the subject to. No credit check, no loan outs, no waiting, no stress. You can save thousands of dollars on closing costs. You don't have to have a survey, you don't have to have an appraisal, you don't have to pay. She's going to keep me moved over, I'm sorry. Okay, you can save thousands of dollars in closing costs by using the subject to because you're not creating a new loan, you're keeping the one. There's little or no cash needed. Probably you get a good interest rate if the original loan was a good interest. Whatever it is, you get to take it over. You can possibly get some cash at closing. It's an effective way to buy any type of property, not just single-family homes. You can buy raw land, commercial property, multi-family properties, shopping centers, hotels, whatever. You can buy those using subject to. It's safe and easy to set up. You have large profits potential, and the paperwork is very, very simple. We'll talk about how to do that in just a minute. But now, why would a seller ever agree to sell you something subject to a loan that they're going to still owe? Well, there's a lot of reasons. And because there's a lot of reasons, you have a lot of opportunity. Here's just a few of them. Foreclosure, sickness, death, divorce, job change. Maybe they're behind on their payments. Maybe they're just old and just want to get away. Excuse me. They have an immediate need for cash. Maybe they inherited the property and just don't know what to do with it. Want somebody else to take it over. Maybe they had to move for some reason. The company may have moved them. They don't like the hassle with renters. And I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to have that, but that would be one reason that they might want to sell it to you. Maybe they're living in another part of the country. Now, if somebody moves to Los Angeles or Chicago or New York and gets a mortgage there, guess what? It's going to cost them a lot more than it cost here. So they probably were just getting by in their budget when they lived here, and so now they're living in New York, paying twice as much for that mortgage, and they still have the mortgage here. You think that might get them motivated? Maybe they will want to get someone else making that payment. They're tired of the hassle, tired of dealing with renters. And there's hundreds of other reasons. That's just some of the main ones. So what I'm saying is motivated sellers are looking for ways, looking for creative ways to sell you the property. And if you're creative and know this technique, you can buy. Now I know you've probably got some concerns. You've probably heard, oh my goodness. What about the due on sale clause? Can't the bank take the property back? Yes, they can. And what if you fail to make the payments? Well, now, if you don't make the payments, they definitely will take the property back. And then there's a concern about bank communications. How are you sure that the payments are being credited? Because you're paying the bank, but the bank is not sending you any information. Where are they sending it?
It's to the seller.
To the seller. Now, some other concerns would be escrow concerns, and your insurance and taxes. Now, let's just talk about these for one at a time. Is this legal? That's a concern. Is it legal to do the subject to? You're taking over a house. You're taking title to a property that someone owes the bank on. Well, now, that doesn't sound right. Wouldn't the bank be upset about that? Well, the answer to that is yes, it's legal. It happens all the time, and the bank know they're probably not going to be upset about it. As long as you're making the payment, they're probably going to be okay with it. What about the due on sale clause? Well, there is a clause since the late 80s when interest rates went higher up. They were lower and they raised, so the bank wanted to be able to foreclose so that they could re-lend and get a higher interest rate. So they put in all of the contracts, all of the mortgage contracts, a due on sale clause, which says if the title changes hands, we have the right to foreclose. Now that doesn't say if the title changes hands, we're going to foreclose. It doesn't say that. It just says, yes, they have the right to foreclose. Will they? Probably not if you make the payments on time and if interest rates don't go way up. Now, let's say that you take over a mortgage on subject to and the interest rate on that note is 6%. And let's say that we have an administration in Washington that's spending money and printing money and spending money and printing money, and the interest rate goes up to 19%. You think that's impossible, then you're not old enough to remember Jimmy Carter. It can happen, and if it does, if the interest rates go up to 19% and this loan is at 6%, do you think that would motivate the banks to foreclose? Well, yes, it would. Okay, so that's just something you need to be aware of. Most of the time, the banks are not going to foreclose as long as you're paying them on time. But what if they do? How long does it take the bank to foreclose on you? Yeah, it's going to take a while. So if you've got 4, 5, 6 months and you know that something like that's going to happen, well, what are you going to do? Yeah, sell it or refinance it. You have plenty of time. So does that lessen the concern? Well, it should. You got plenty of time to do whatever's necessary. Okay. Let's talk about the escrow concerns and the bank communications. Once you take over this property, the bank still is going to the seller for the payment, even though you're making the payment. And the bank still has the seller's name on all the paperwork. So when you go to sell the property, what if you sell it in December? Well, the bank has been collecting, in most cases, the insurance and the taxes for 12 months. And around here, that may be $5,000 or $6,000. Who's going to get the escrow check at closing? Who's the bank going to mail the check to? The seller. Whose money is it? That's a concern. That's a real concern. Anyway, there's certain things you can do to protect yourself. One of the things that I do is I have the seller write a letter. And they don't put a date on it. They just write a letter explaining to the bank that they have rented this property out and they've got a new company that's going to be doing the management. That company happens to be me. So now they've asked the bank to send all the correspondence or to accept any question from this new company, which is my company. I also have the seller tell the bank that they are living at a new address. Their new address is 6902 Shorebreeze Court. That's my house. So now the bank is sending them all of the paperwork, but where is it coming? It's coming to me. That way I know that it's being credited as it should be, and I also know what is the amount of the escrow so that I can get it when it comes time. Also, you have an insurance problem because the mortgage company wants to see that home insured by who they think the owner is. So you have to get yourself put on that insurance title as additional insured, so if it burns to the ground, the check will come to your house, but it will have their name on it and your name. So both of you will have to sign in order to get that check. You also have to kind of stay in touch with the people that you purchased it from, because when it comes time for payoff, that letter they gave you may not be good enough. Banks are kind of ornery. They have all these secrecy things. They don't want to get in trouble because of that. So they want to give the payoff to the person who owes the debt and not somebody else. So when the title company tries to contact them, they want a release from the people who they think, or who actually do owe the money on the property. So what this means is this: as long as you own this property, you need to make and be friends with the people who sold it. Even if they moved to Houston or Chicago or New York or California, you need to know how to get in touch with them, because you may need them to contact the bank for you. And sometimes they'll disappear. They'll change their email address. They'll move. They won't tell you. Their number will change, and that can get tricky unless you really cover your bases. Now, this is critical. If during the negotiations to purchase this house subject to, someone says, "I'm thinking about filing bankruptcy," this is over. We're not going to do this. Do not buy a house subject to from someone that you know is going to file bankruptcy. Because what's going to happen, probably, if it's within a certain period of time, you're going to get a letter from the bankruptcy court saying this is no longer yours. We're taking it back to give to the creditors. You don't want to buy a home subject to and fix it up and spend a lot of money and then have the bankruptcy court come and take it away from you. So I know you may think, oh, it was a good deal. Well, you don't want to take that chance. Now, if the bank decides that they want to take advantage of this due on sale clause, the federal government is going to punish them, because they're foreclosing on a property and they're taking it back. And for every property they have, let's say the note was $100,000. For every $100,000 of bad debt that the bank has on the books, they're not allowed to lend about 8 times that much. It's not exact, but somewhere around that. So how much is that? $800,000. So if a bank is foreclosing, taking all the due on sale clauses back, they'll eventually get to the point where they don't have any money to lend. They're in the business to lend money, so they really don't want it back. Okay? And also, the bank has to get permission from HUD in order to do that. And HUD hasn't ever given that permission. So they probably will at some time, depending on what happens to the interest rates. But now let's say that you've purchased this house, subject to, and you owe these payments. Maybe you don't have a lot of money. What are you going to do? I'm sorry. I'm skipping to another line. Money for payments. You have a choice. You can pay the mortgage or lose the property. Well, where do you get the money? Okay, where do you get the money? You can rent the property. You can sell the property. You can rent to own, or you can lease option. Because as long as someone else is paying you more than you're having to pay, then everything's fine. Now, it's got lease option there. Can we do lease options in Texas?
For 180 days.
That's right. That's a trick question, but everybody's pretty much aware of the 6 months rule. Yeah, you can do it for 6 months, but then the title has to change hands. You can do rent to own, which means you're just renting it, and that they're going to buy it at some point, and they're paying you monthly payments, and then you get to pay the subject to. Or you could sell the property. Now, which one of these, if you're doing subject to, is best? Which one would be the best?
Sell.
Sell is the right answer. And the reason is you've got all these problems. The seller may move out of state. You may lose them. You may have a problem with a bank finding out what the payoff is. You've got the escrow concerns. The best thing to do is if you have a property that you've purchased subject to, if you don't want to have a whole lot of paperwork trying to keep up with somebody, the best thing to do is just go ahead and sell it and then pay off that payment and take your equity. Here's where it says, FHA insured loans, lenders are required to receive from HUD permission to foreclose on the mortgage. Now, as of the time I did this research, which was a couple of years ago, HUD had never given that permission. So there is not a lot of foreclosure on the subject. So you don't really have to worry about it. Now, there's a lot of ways to profit. You can get paid from the seller. You can use a non-refundable option from the tenant buyer. The spread between the mortgage and the lease payments. You can have back-end profit, the difference from what you paid, the sale price, and what you sell it for. And then there's tax benefits. Once you take the property, it belongs to you. Well, really, it belongs to you as much as any property can in a state that doesn't have mortgages but has deeds of trust. The trustee actually has the property, but you have a deed to the property. So the tax benefits is that once you own the property, you can start taking depreciation on the building itself, not the land. And whatever interest payments you make, that's tax deductible also. How to set it up. Now, people ask me this all the time. They want a contract. What is do you have a subject to contract? What's the magic formula? Well, it's not magic, it's just really simple. It's almost so simple it just goes right over everybody's head. It is the sales contract. In Texas, it's the TREC sales contract. It's just the regular contract. Except you put an addendum, or on number 11 on the Texas contract, you know where it says special provisions? You can just write it in there. All it says is that this contract is subject to the existing mortgage. And then you write down everything that you know about the mortgage. The best thing to do, though, is to have your title company do this for you, or your attorney. you have to have a copy of the mortgage so that they will have the information. Then you want to have a special warranty deed. Special warranty deed, which moves the title from the seller to you. Now you own the property. You want to become listed as additional insured. You want the insurance policy to change to, say, a landlord policy. And you want to change the address of the seller to your address so that the bank is sending you all of the information. Now I'm going to stop right here before we go forward, because that's really the end of how subject to works. Is there anybody that still has a question about? Yes, sir.
My question has to do with escrows.
I'm sorry?
Has to do with the escrows.
Okay.
If the property is sold through the title transfer, the seller's name is still on the mortgage, I don't understand why the mortgage company would need to disperse the funds in the escrow to the seller rather than to pay taxes and insurance.
Oh, they do pay the taxes insurance. They will pay the taxes insurance every year. Honey, would you go talk? The only time you have to worry about is when the property sells. When you sell that property.
Oh, to the end buyer.
That's right.
Okay.
You've been making the payments. The bank's been collecting the escrow, and it's November. Taxes are not due. They're not going to pay the taxes, and maybe the insurance hadn't been paid for the year. So there's $6,000 sitting there.
Yeah.
Once that mortgage is paid off, the bank is going to write a check to, not you. They're going to write a check and they're going to mail it to you because they have your address, but it's going to have the other person's name on it. Good question. Someone else get it?
Okay, but if you deduct the interest payment, isn't there going to be a double tax deduction on the same interest payment? And won't the owners of the note be assuming a deduction as well?
If they do, they're making an error. The government can come back and fine them for it.
They can still get the deduction on the mortgage interest, right?
No.
Now, if you're,
No, you get it. I mean, they can list it. They may get by with it, but they're not supposed to. But now, again, I'm not a CPA. You need to ask your CPA on that. Yes.
Alan, when do you insure clear title?
You don't get it. You do not have a clear title. I mean, you have a deed, but the title has an encumbrance on it.
What if when you do get ready to close, it has a clouded title?
Well, you're going to pay that off. That'll be paid off at closing. When you get ready to sell, that mortgage company will be notified. Okay, that's some good questions. Now, let's talk about wraps, because every time somebody mentions, yes, sir.
One more. If the bank is sending you statements with the seller's name on it, how can you legally open their mail to see what the statements say?
Well, you've told them. I mean, they're the ones that change their address. They've given you permission to do that. They change their address to your address. They know what you're doing.
Okay, so if it comes to your address with their name on it, you can open their mail?
Well, they've given you permission.
Okay.
Now, they've changed their address to yours. Yes, sir.
Along those lines, I assume you get that permission in writing, just in case they decide to change their mind again.
That's a great point. Get it in writing. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever had sellers balk at that when you say, I know you're living here, but I'd like you to list my address for...
No, the reason they did this in the first place is because they're motivated.
Exactly.
They do whatever you want them to do if they're motivated. Now, let's talk about wraps. Can you purchase property? Now, this is a trick question. Can you purchase property with a wrap instead of a subject to?
Yeah.
Yes, you absolutely can. Would you want to do that? Absolutely not. Because then you're paying the seller and expecting them to pay the note. Do you think they will? I don't think they will. Why do you think I think that? That's right. It will not work. You cannot do it. When you're buying property, you use subject to. When you're selling property, you use a wrap. And there's one word that can keep it in your mind why it works that way, and that's this: control. You want to be in control. When it comes to money, you better be in control. Because if you write somebody a check for $1,500 and say, oh, I know they're going to pay that $1,000 and keep the other $5,000, they're probably going to keep all $1,500. So you just stay in control. Now, in case you don't know what a wrap is, it's a wraparound mortgage. It's a form of secondary financing for selling real estate, not buying. So if you have a property that's got a mortgage on it, and you want to sell it to someone else, then you make an agreement that they're going to pay you so much money. Let's say you owe $1,000 a month, and they're going to pay you $1,500 a month. So it's an all-inclusive. You've wrapped that in. They're paying you $1,500. Out of the $1,500, you're paying the mortgage, which you owe, and you're keeping $500, which they owe you. That's great. You've got control. You know that your mortgage is getting paid even though they own the property. You sold it to them on a wrap. Now, it's so simple that it's complicated. It's so simple it's hard to grasp. It can't be that easy. Well, it is. It's just the seller extends a junior mortgage, which is like a second or a third, which wraps around a superior mortgage, which is the one that you owe, the big mortgage, that is secured by the property. It's that simple. If anybody ever, you can just go back to this. If anybody ever says wrap, go back and read that. It's that. Pure and simple. With a wrap, the seller, which is you, accepts a secured note for the amount due on the underlying mortgage plus an additional amount, which is paying you your profit. The buyer will make the monthly payments to the seller. The seller is responsible for paying the first loan, and if the buyer defaults, the seller has the right to foreclose. So if they don't pay me, I can foreclose. I'm in total control. I know exactly what's going on. Did that hit everybody? Everybody understand wraps now? I don't expect you to, but maybe you're closer. Also with a wrap, the title actually transfers to the buyer, which may be a trigger for the due on sale clause, if such a clause exists. Now you might want to be concerned because someone else owns the property, you owe the mortgage, and if the bank forecloses, who are they foreclosing on?
You.
Well, now how's the buyer going to like that? You think you may end up having some legal talks with your attorney because that bank's going to come and take the property away. So, yeah, yes, sir.
How do land trusts come into play in these kind of situations?
It's a totally different topic. I'll cover it on another day. Okay?
Because that's what I was taught. Some of the guys that actually teach these, they do a lot of stuff in land trust for protection.
Well, it might protect you legally, but not from gunshots. There's more to this business than just the legal part. When somebody gets really, really upset with you in Texas, you better watch. All right. Yes, sir.
A question on wraps. The last situation you were talking about, what if you purchased a house subject to and sold it on a wrap? Then
I wouldn't do that. That's too complicated. You'd be better off having the mortgage in your name. If you got somebody else's name and then you sell it on a wrap, that can probably be done, but I'd really study hard before I would get in that deep. Okay, in review, subject to is a great way to control property. It's safe and legal. There's no credit check, no loan outs, no waiting. Saves thousands of dollars in closing costs. Little or no cash needed. Excellent profit potential. It's a simple and easy to set up. It is simple and easy to set up. And wraps are for selling and not for buying. Now, when you purchase a property subject to, usually the seller wants more money. They don't want just their mortgage paid. They want their mortgage paid plus part of their equity. Now, if let's say the mortgage is $100,000, and they want another $20,000 in equity, and the home may be worth $160,000. Where's the $20,000 going to come from? Are you just going to write them a check for $20,000? Well, hopefully you don't. Hopefully you'll know a technique that's going to get you past that. So the way to handle that, if you're good, is by creating a note. Now, with notes, you can purchase some fantastic deals. It's a way of creating money out of thin air. It's how the government runs. Has anybody ever bought has anybody ever bought anything with a note? Raise your hand. Okay, now so about half of you. The other half needs to look in your pocket at your dollar bill. Right here in the corner it says note. Everything you buy is with a note. Now when I was a kid, it said silver certificate. It meant it was secured by silver. Now it's secured by the government's good word. Good luck. Good luck. But anyway, so far they're spendable. Every year it seems to get a little bit less. But anyway, so a note is just an IOU saying I'm good for this. Writing a note is like creating money. So what does a note look like? There's two. We're talking about different kind of note. So what is a note? It's an agreement to pay money, a signed agreement promising a payment of a sum of money on demand. It could just be one payment at a specific time, or it could be a group of payments. And it's just written up that way. I owe you this money, and I'm going to pay you back over this period of time at this interest rate. So is creating a note legal? Aren't you competing with the government? The answer is yes, you're competing with the government, but no, it's not illegal. It's legal. It's just an IOU, a promise to make an amount of payment in some amount. Anyone can write one anytime, and it doesn't have to be secured by anything. I could write you a note saying, I promise to pay you $10,000 in 5 years. Now, you'd probably have a hard time finding me in 5 years, but that would be a real note. They're easy to create. So how do you create them? The easiest way to do it is to go to the title company, and there's one on just about every corner. So you just stop at the title company and say, create this note. You give them all the information, and the next thing you know, you sign it, and it's all a done deal. You can have a real estate attorney do it, but they usually charge a lot more than a title company. and the title company probably has an attorney that's going to look over it. They're not very expensive. And once you do one of them and get the verbiage, just keep it. Have your secretary type it up, and next time just change the information, because once you've got one in your hand, then you can use it over and over and over again. Here's the basic information. You need the parties, their contact information, the amount, if any, being paid in consideration. For example, if you're buying a property and you're paying $5,000 down and then a note for the rest of it, you want to put the $5,000 on there. The cash being paid to the seller, the collateral pledged as a security, and the address and the legal description of the property. You also need the amount of the note, terms, and when the total payoff is due. Now, if you have monthly payments, when will the payoff be due? Whatever the note says. It could be due in a year, it could be due in 5 years, or it could be an amortization. What does amortization mean? Where does the word amortize come from?
It means you break down a payment over a period of time, and then you pay it at a specific schedule.
That's right. What are you doing? What is death? That's right. The word comes from mortician, or it means to kill. So what you're doing is over a period of time, you're going to kill it. You're going to pay, and eventually it's dead. It's gone. Okay? But now, if you, at some point, let's say that you have a 20-year amortization, but in 5 years you decide I'm going to pay it off, what's that called?
Balloon.
A balloon. So you can have a 20, 30, 40, 50-year amortization, so that it would take 50 years to pay it off, but in your notes you say, but in 5 years it all comes due. That's called a balloon. And if you ever have one of those, it's amazing how fast those 5 years go by. I mean, there it is due. Really, it doesn't seem like that long. Okay. Where the payments are to be made, and anything about a balloon, if there is. So what assurance does the seller have that you're going to pay them the note? Well, they have two assurances. One is they have a note and a deed of trust. Now in Texas, there are a lot of mortgage companies, but guess what? How many mortgages are there in Texas? None, because it's not a mortgage state. It's a deed of trust state. So everything that's filed or recorded are deeds of trust. There's no mortgages recorded. So, is the note recorded? No. Why is the note not recorded?
It's a contract between the
well, it's nobody's business. It's a public record. You don't want everybody knowing what you paid and what's owed to you. I mean, somebody can go in and find some information on you that you don't want them to have. So the only thing that's recorded is the deed of trust. So, but wait a minute, how are they going to know what to pay you? If the note is not recorded, how's the title company going to know what to pay you? They're going to call you, because once it's recorded, there's a lien on that property. The title company has to clear the lien. So they'll call you and say, hey, I see you have a lien on this property. What is it? You say, I have a note. What's the payoff? So you're protected. You're protected. You don't have your information out in public record, and you've got a lien on the property which secures it. So you tell the buyer, don't worry, I'm going to give you a note, and there's going to be a deed of trust recorded at the courthouse, so that if I don't pay you, you can foreclose. You can foreclose on the property. So, purchasing real estate with a note. First thing you need is a motivated seller. A motivated seller is receptive to techniques that will solve their problem. To handle their existing mortgage, either by taking it subject to, or getting your own first mortgage and give them a note for the balance. Or you could just give them a note for the entire amount and let them pay the mortgage, or maybe they don't owe a mortgage. If there's no mortgage present, you just give them the note for the entire amount. Now sometimes they may want some cash and a note. And that's a technique to find out how much cash they need and try to narrow that down and give them as small amount as possible. Sometimes you will have to come up with some cash. Second mortgages. Now, these are just some terms that you need to know. Do we have any second mortgages in Texas? Well, not recorded. We have deeds of trust, but mortgage companies, when they loan you money, they call it a mortgage because it's an amortized. What you have is an amortized payment. What does second mean, though? Why do you say it's a second? That's right, it's in a lower position than the first. It just means when it was recorded, because if the mortgage company records a lien, and then you record a lien, and then someone else records a lien, they're in third position, you're in second, and the mortgage company's in first. Now, even though, what if a mortgage company drags their feet and you go record yours first? You're in first position. Now, the mortgage company's not going to put up with that. They'll find out, and they're going to start raising some sand until you get it straightened out. But whoever records first is in first position. It's just in line. What position are you in? Now, the first position is the strongest position. If there is a foreclosure, the people in the first position may get some money back. The people in the second, third, and fourth position probably won't get much if they get any at all. Nothing down. Nothing down means that you're going to buy someone's property and no money out of your pocket. Now, the techniques that we're talking about are nothing down techniques. You take their mortgage over subject to, and you give them a note for the rest, and you have no money out of your pocket. Is that right? Kind of. If you get a home, what do you got to do?
Fix it up.
You got to fix it up. Yeah, you can't rent it out until you fix it up, and that costs money too. You did buy it for nothing down, but there's still a cost involved, and the simple way to take care of that is to partner with somebody that does that. And my maintenance guy, he told me last week, I'm partnering with a couple of people. Those people didn't have to pay anything to get the home fixed up, and he's getting paid more than he normally would, and that's pretty easy to find. So if you use these three techniques, number one, subject to, number two, notes, and number three, partner with somebody that does the maintenance, how much does it cost you to do the deal? Zero. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good deals if you buy them for the right amount of money. Now, you can get properties for nothing down, and you're in a mess because you pay way too much. That's something you need to avoid. Overfinancing, using a note to get cash for repairs or increase the value of landscaping, carpeting, and painting. Now, one of the techniques that I like to use, one of my favorite techniques is, when I buy a property, I end up with cash at closing. When I buy a property, it's usually got a lot of equity, and I want part of that equity at closing, so I overfinance it. For example, let's say I bought a $150,000 property, and I bought it for $90,000. It's going to cost $10 to fix it up, which is $100, and I'll borrow $105. At closing, I get $5,000. Now, is that taxable money? No, it's a loan. It's a loan. It's money that I can spend for anything I want to. Is it spendable? I mean, can you use it? Is it like income? It is. Is it income? No. That's why it's loan proceeds. So if you learn that skill and can do it over and over and over again, you can make a pretty good living and not even have to ever pay any taxes. So you don't get so upset when the government spends all the tax money you didn't put in. Buying back a note. Now this is a great technique. If you do not know this, this is worth your $35. This will make you wealthy. When someone sells a house that they've lived in for the last 7 or 8 years, what was that house to them? Was it important to them?
Yes.
What's it called? Your home is your
Castle.
castle. You're buying their castle. And when somebody gets ready to sell their home, do they go to work and say, I'm going to sell my house? And does their friend at work say, well, what's it worth? What you going to get for it? And they say, I'm going to get $150,000. Well, you know something? That house may be worth $150,000 if it's got new carpet, the walls are painted, has a new roof, and the plumbing's reconditioned, and maybe it needs a new air conditioning system. It may be worth $150,000, but the chances of them getting it's not very good. Do you agree? But if you can show them a way that they can get the $150,000 by using notes, by using creative financing, then you have taken this emotional attachment, this peer pressure away from them. They can go to work, say, I sold my house. What'd you get? $150,000. They're happy, okay? They're able to move to the other house, and you're paying them a little bit on the note every month, and they're happy. Well, in 2 years, where's their castle?
Where it used to be.
It's not your house, it's where they're living now. In 2 years, do they have an emotional attachment to the house that you're paying on? No. So if you owe somebody $40,000 on a note, you need to put on your calendar, I'm going to visit them in 2 years. In 2 years, you're going to visit them and you're going to say, John, guess what? Yeah, what? Say, well, I had this stroke of luck. I sold a couple more houses than I thought I was going to, and I've got a lot more cash than I thought. And I thought about you, John. I thought about you when I got this money. He said, really? Yeah. You know that little note that I'm paying you? I've been paying on it for 2 years. I don't know what it is now. And they said, yeah, I know that. You pay me every month. Okay? Well, I got this $25,000 here, and I thought maybe you could use that. And I thought, well, if I just give you this $25,000, maybe we can just call that even. Is that a good deal?
For you.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll do it?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've never had anybody turn it down, ever. Because they don't have an emotional attachment anymore. They don't have peer pressure anymore. And there's $25,000 on the table, cash, right now, instead of the little piddly $75 a month that I'm paying them. Now, I don't pay much when I pay a note for that reason. I don't want them to be excited about those monthly payments. I want them to be excited about $25,000. Because when they take that, how much have I paid this note down in 2 years?
$15,000.
At $7,500 a month. With interest, I haven't paid it down at all. I probably owe them more than $40. Really. But if they take the 25, did I just make $15,000? Would this, knowing this technique, allow you to go and buy a house and pay a little bit too much for it? A little bit. Just a little bit too much, because you know in a couple of years you're going to pay this note off. And it's not going to be what you said. What is a note worth? How much is a $10,000 note, face value, worth? How many think it's $10,000? We got a smart group here. You're right. Because notes sell every day. You can go on the internet and buy a $10,000 note for $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000. The market value for a face value on a note is not very good. Even if they have good credit and they're paying well, you may be able to buy that $10,000 note if it has a really good underlying security, and the people have really great credit and they've never missed a payment. You can still buy it for about $8,500. So when you pay somebody with a $10,000 note, have you paid them $10,000? No, because first of all, you're not going to pay that note off. You're going to buy it back at a discount. You're going to buy it back. You know that up front. And the time value of money. $1 today is not worth the same as $1 10 years from now. If I said, I'm going to give you $10 right now or $50 in 10 years, what are you going to take? Yeah. Well, of course. Because it's called the time value of money. And if you understand the time value of money, it makes you a much better real estate investor. So what a note's worth depends on the interest rate, the position, the amount, the payments made, the strength of the credit of the maker, the collateral, the amortization, and time value of money. Now, I just explained it, but let me just make another example. When you win the lottery, they give you two choices. It's the $40 million lottery, but you go in there and say, well, you don't get $40 million today. Did you know that? You don't get $40 million today. If you want it today, it's just $15 million. That's how it works. $70 million lottery. Oh, well, no, it's not that much today. The $70 million is over the next 20 years. But still, that'd be pretty good. I'd like to do that. But that's because the lottery people know the time value. So, a lottery gives you a choice of receiving $1 million over 25 years or $500,000 today. Which would you want? If you're smart, value of money. You'd want the cash, because you could take that cash and turn it into a lot more. The longer you have to wait for money, the less it's worth. Money today has more value than money in the future. So I just did that example. Which is better? Now I want you to answer this. Just think about this really hard. Which is better, to receive $1,100 in a year or $1,610 in 5 years, or $500 in 5 years and $181 a month from now to then? Which is better? Who knows the answer? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Well, I don't know the answer either, because that would be very difficult to figure out. But if I wanted to know the answer, I would use a financial calculator. Now, if you're doing notes, you need to know how to use a financial calculator. They're all over the internet. You can, if you have a little internet computer that you carry with you, you don't need one of these. But the calculations on these things are so complicated that it literally takes it 2 or 3 seconds to figure it out. Now, if you buy a calculator at the Dollar Tree, Texas Instruments, and you go 75 times 365, you hit it instantly. Right there's the number, right? But these calculations are so complicated that when you put them in and push figure it, the thing's going and then it tells you the number. Now that should give you an idea of how difficult it would be to try to figure that out. And you cannot figure it out using a regular calculator. So what you need to find is one that have these keys. The keys say N, the number of payments, as yearly interest, PMT for payment, PV for present value, FV for future value. And those, you can see that these little keys right here are a different color. If the calculator does not have those keys, it's not the financial calculator that you want. But by learning to use this, you can go in and purchase a home from somebody that's been paying on a note at 8% interest, $568 a month. It was originally a $40,000 note. They've been paying on it for 4 years and 6 months. You can punch that in and you can know to the penny what they owe today. To the penny. Now, that's some pretty powerful information. And you really need to know how to make that work. But I can tell you this, when you get this, you're going to start scratching your head. You're going to think, man, this is really difficult to get to work right. So that's why I put Calculator Power by John Richards. When you were in the 4th grade, the teacher sent you home and made you work problems, right? Multiplication, division, and before long you got to so you could do multiplication and division. When you get this, you need to buy that book. Now, John's passed away, but he still has a website, Noteworthy. Noteworthy is the website. It's Noteworthy magazine. And I think the book's $19. But it gives you problems and then it tells you the answers. You need to go through that whole book and really get a grasp of this, and you'll just be surprised at the things that you can do with the time value of money once you understand how it works. Okay, taking notes, using notes to sell property. Now, it's so much easier to sell a property if the people do not have to come up with a big down payment. Right now, the government's paying $8,000 to a couple who purchases a house if they haven't had one in, I think it's 3 years. So, maybe they don't have any money for a down payment, but they got great credit, they got a good history, they're a good possibility, they're willing to pay you the whole amount, but they need $8,000 in order to close this deal. Showing that it was paid, you need to do something, because if they owe you $40,000 and they owe the first mortgage of $120,000 and they're not paying that, your 40 is about to go up in smoke. Stay in touch with the payer. Use a foreclosure attorney. If they don't pay you, foreclose on them. Get the property foreclosed on. Oh, now, most people that don't pay are used to renting property. They rent property and they know they're going to get a 3-day letter, and then they know that they got to go to court, and they know that they got another week, and maybe they'll pay you the day before the constable comes. They know that because they've done it a lot. That's their way of living. So now you are taking money from them on a note, and they're the same people. But they don't know that it takes 4 months to foreclose or 6 months. They don't know that. So if you treat it like you're evicting them, like they're a renter, they will react in the same way. So you send them a 3-day letter. Send them the same letter as if they were a renter. And try to make it feel to them as though they're going to have to be out in a month instead of 5 months. I tell you what, if they ever know that it's going to take 4 or 5 months, they're going to live there for free for the next 4 or 5 months. Who gets the property if it's foreclosed on?
You have the first lien.
Trustee.
The trustee sells the property. Do you get it if you're the first lien holder? if you're the highest bidder, only if you're the highest bidder. You get paid, but you don't get the property. And most people think of that differently. They think, well, I'm going to foreclose and get the property. You'll only get the property if you go to the auction, and you bid what's owed. That's what banks do. If you ever go to the auctions, you know, you'll be there to make your offer, and the bank will be standing there, and if they're owed $150,000, they'll bid $150,000. What if they say, well, maybe I have a better chance of getting it at $160,000? You think a bank would bid $160,000?
No.
Well, no. What if the bank says, well, I may have a better chance if I bid $20,000? What's the bank going to bid? They're going to bid what you do. That's what they're going to bid. And if they don't show up or they get lost or whatever, then you may get it for less than the first mortgage, but most of the time the bank's going to get it back. But if you're the first mortgage holder, do you have to bid what is due you at the auction?
You have to.
No.
No.
No. What if you don't?
Take a loss.
If you're going to get it, it doesn't matter. If you're the winner, it doesn't matter. But what if you're owed $150,000, somebody comes in and bids $120,000? Okay, how much are you going to get paid? $120,000. That's all that's there. Whatever they bid is what you're going to get. So if you want to get your money back, you've got to go in and bid what's owed you and hope somebody else bids more. Now, are you going to get the more? No. You're going to get what's owed you. Once the trustee sells the property, they're going to start paying off liens. They pay you the first off first, the second off second, and the third. So you need to understand how this works in order to be able to do this. So, you know. Study. Yes, sir.
Do you have to be the trustee to get the other liens divested?
You're not the trustee. In other words, when in a deed of trust state, you get a deed, the trustee owns the property, and it's not you. It's some trustee, some guy, some person, somebody else. Yes, sir.
Now, if they owe any back taxes, then the bank no longer is a priority, right?
That's right. That's right. Taxes have to be paid on the property. The taxes, they don't drop off. That's true. Okay, this is important, do's and don'ts. This is a great list. You might want to keep this. When you're talking about notes, you do use notes to purchase. Do buy back the notes at a discount. Do learn how to use the time value of money in your favor. Do learn to use a financial calculator, and do find a noteworthy newsletter. It's on the internet. If you're going to do notes, read that newsletter. It's got some great techniques. Don't take notes at face value. If somebody's going to give you a note for $10,000, so is it worth $10,000? No. So if you want $10,000, somebody wants to give you a note, you say, okay, I'll take a note, but it's going to have to be $18,000, because you know the time value of money. If you take a note for face value, you're losing. Don't take a weak second position. Don't take a weak second position. If the first position, if the bank is upside down, if it's a $100,000 home and they owe the bank $120,000, and then you take a note on top of that, you're not going to get anything. It has to be a strong first position for the bank. The bank needs to have a lot of equity before you're going to take a note.
What would be a strong second?
Well, a strong first position would be if the home's worth $150,000, they only owe the bank $100,000. There's $50,000 in equity there. Then you could take a second on that, and you'd have some. Don't think that foreclosing on the note will be easy. Don't think it's going to be like eviction. Don't think it's going to be fast. And don't even be sure you can do it at all. Because it's a difficult thing to do. You have to have a foreclosure attorney, not your real estate attorney. You have to have a foreclosure attorney to do a foreclosure. If you get your guy to do it, he says, oh yeah, I can do it. 2 years later, he may still be working on it. Don't, now this is big, ever buy a note if you do not know what you're doing. You will absolutely be taken. You will absolutely, if you don't know, I've had people say, oh, I found this $10,000 note that I could buy for $4,000. That's probably not worth 50 cents. I mean, you really need to know what you're doing. Before you do that. Okay, well, I've talked a lot, and we've got about 10 more minutes. I need a drink of water. I know you just got 1,000 questions, so who's first? Christine.
Okay, example, the notes have kind of made something set off a bell here. I just bought a house, or will be buying a house. Let's say I'm paying close to $100,000.
Right.
The value of the house is worth close to $150,000.
Right.
They're going FHA on their loan. I've got a couple that's interested. Let me back up. I've got a couple interested in buying it wholesale. They're going FHA. If FHA will only approve it, because I ran against this, they want to see proof of the repairs and proof of cost of your improvements to justify your asking price now, because I'm putting it at $129, $130 is my asking so I can make my profit. But if and they want it as is to do their own improvements. If they'll only get finance, if FHA will only give them, let's just say roughly the $100,000, would you even consider doing a note for the balance of your asking price?
Well, the problem with that is FHA probably not going to do the note, probably not going to do the loan if you're doing a second.
Okay.
They want the people to put their money down, and they want to know where the money came from. And if it came from you, they're probably not going to do the deal.
Okay.
So the note, you're probably not going to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Earlier you had mentioned about basically having the bank give you the amount for the purchase, the amount for your rehab, and then some extra. How do you get them to do that?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing is, you know, there's 5 skills. One of the skills is money. Part of the skill of being able to get the money that you want from banks or whatever is forming a good relationship. It's not, you don't walk in the bank and get them to do this. You work with the bank over a period of time. Maybe you go golfing with the vice president. Maybe you take them out to lunch a couple of times. You do a lot of trading with the bank. They know you. You do a lot of deals with their bank. You pay right on time. You go in and say, I've got this $150,000 home. The easy way to do it is to buy the home first, fix it up and rent it, and then go borrow more. The easy way is take credit card money, line of credit, pay cash for the house, fix it up, rent it, go to the bank and say, I own this $150,000 house. Here is the lease agreement. Here's how much I'm getting per month. I don't want 80% of 150. I only want 100. Well, maybe you paid 60 for it. And they'll do that pretty much every time if you've got a good relationship with them. Another thing you can do to answer your question and without having to buy the house up front is you can say, okay, I'm paying this much for the house, but it's worth 150. It's going to take me 30 to fix it up. And you have 3 contractors give you an estimate for 30. Now, maybe this is 3 contractors that are not your contractor, okay? And so they'll loan you that. Then you have your contractor do it, and it only costs 15 or 16. And that's okay. I mean, they don't care. They're not going to come back and say, show me. If you've got the relationship. The key to getting money from banks is having a good relationship. Having a good relationship, a long-term relationship of quality work. Then you can get what you want pretty much when you want it if you know how to structure it, how to make it look good to them. They just want to get paid back. They want to have a good bit of equity in the property. And, you know, they want you to be successful too. Good question. Yes, sir.
If I were to create a note, whether it's a wraparound mortgage, let's say it's the first position, what would prevent me from having the buyer sign a deed in lieu and tell them that I would file this deed in lieu if they were to default on the note, instead of having to go through a full foreclosure process?
Well, that's going to trip that 6-month clause for lease options, and it covers a number of other things, and that's one of them. You know, the title, that title has to change hands, and it has to be their property.
No, it would be.
Yeah, but you're asking them to sell it, to give you paperwork that's going to sell it back to you?
The place could put it in escrow, yeah. Said that if you default on the note, that I will take the property back.
Okay, my answer to that would be ask your real estate attorney, and he's probably not going to let you do it. That's my answer. I'm not an attorney, I don't know, but I think you're going to run into problems. Yes, sir.
I was late, I'm sorry. I missed the part where it says, is this legal? Is it safe to assume that since we will be using a standard track form, would that make it legal?
Well, no, that doesn't make it legal. It's just legal if you do it the right way. It's just not illegal to do subject to. It's not illegal to do a note as long as you do it right way. You don't have to use a track form, although it just makes it a lot easier. And if you use the Texas forms, people are more comfortable, and the judges are more comfortable if you ever get to court. Good question. Yes, sir.
What is the best way to market to these people who are willing to accept these sites like mail and stuff like that? This,
Well, the best way to find people who would be willing to do it, that's a whole nother class. That's number one, finding, you know, the first skill is finding deals. Today we're talking about money.